evening. My name is Howie Chen, working at the UN Statistics Division, leading the work on citizen data and household surveys. Welcome everyone to the webinar on leveraging citizen data for UN 2.0. It is a great pleasure for us to have the opportunity to discuss the crucial role of citizen data and our work on citizen data in advancing the UN 2.0 vision, where innovation, culture shifts, and enhanced skills coverage converge to turbocharge support for people and planet. Please use the chat to introduce yourself, welcome, and Q&A if you have questions for the speakers. Today we have a great panel that will really discuss how we use citizen data and how does that contribute to UN 2.0 vision. Let me first introduce Liu Yimin, the Chief of the SDG Monitoring Section at the UN Statistics Division, for her opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Howie. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this exciting Insight event. So this event aims to explore the transformative potential of citizen data in shaping a more inclusive, responsive, and impactful United Nations system. So more than halfway through the SDGs journey, we are facing a sobering picture. Only 15% of the SDG targets are on a track to be achieved by 2030. This calls for a course correction and a renewed push by all. So by accelerating to achieve these goals also depends on a critical element, which is data. So in an era defined by rapid digital transformation and the ever-increasing importance of data, we recognize that traditional data collection methods and sources alone are no longer sufficient to address the complex challenges we face. This is where citizen data emerged, offering a powerful catalyst for bridging critical data gaps, foster inclusivity, and strengthening accountability. So what is citizen data? Citizen contribution data can be described as the engagement of citizens at a different stage of the data value chain. Citizen data reflect the diverse perspectives and experiences that may not be adequately represented in traditional statistical frameworks. So this data contribute valuable insight based on the collective wisdom and lived experience of citizens. So let me just give you a couple of examples. So in India, data collected by marginalized community exposed disparities in social protection access. In Kenya, data collected by the indigenous communities identifies challenges in accessing healthcare and education, and this prompted the action by the local governments and the donors. So in Ghana, citizen science data on marine litter helped fill data gaps for SDG indicator 14.1.1. This is just a glimpse of the transformative power citizen data hold. So UN DESA Statistical Division, together with many of our partners, which also are here, embarked on this journey 2 years ago. We jointly launched the UN Collaborative on Citizen Data last year. The Collaborative on Citizen Data is a platform that brings together diverse stakeholders to unlock the full potential of citizen data. At today's event, we will unveil the Copenhagen Framework on citizen data, which is a comprehensive blueprint that developed by the collaborative that provide guidance and the best practice for leveraging citizen data to drive sustainable development. Through this framework, we aim to empower the UN agencies, country offices, and partners to champion citizen data initiatives that amplify the voices of marginalized communities, promote inclusive decision-making, and accelerate progress towards SDG. So I invite all of you to actively engage in the discussion, share your insight, and explore the opportunity that citizen data present for realizing the UN 2.0. So thank you very much for your participation. Back to you, Howie.
Thank you so much, Yongyi. Before we really start our with our great panel, if you could give me 5 minutes so we can introduce a little bit of our work on the Copenhagen Framework, the framework that we work together for citizen data, and also a couple words on the collaborative. Sichi, can you move to the next slide? Next one. So before I get into the framework, just a couple of sentences on why the framework. In Bangkok 2022, a year and a half ago, that was our first time bringing everyone together to discuss how we can leverage the power of citizen data for official reporting and for many other things. But quickly into the discussion, we realized it was very difficult for us to really move on the discussion if we don't have an agreement on what citizen data is and what are the different ways and that citizen can play a role in data. So it's really hard for us to really support and formulate the actions points for the community to move forward. Now, the framework has been developed and up to now has become a tool and will become a tool that brings different communities together. Next slide, please. There are four parts within the framework. The first one is conceptual framework, where we define what citizen data is. And then there are principles of citizen data, as we have been had a lot of discussion on principles for official statistics. That we also have a set of principles for citizen data, and we have explored enabling environments, set of enabling environment for sustainable coordination, production, and use of citizen data. And lastly, we have the roadmap for us to work together to implement the framework. Next slide. So what's in the framework? What do we mean by citizen data? Here, this is box 1 in the framework. We have a link underneath. Please feel free to look at the framework. There are basically 3 aspects in this definition. One is engagement of citizens, which has been considered extremely important. How do we engage citizens throughout data value chain or data cycle from the beginning and the design stage all the way to the dissemination and use stage? And then another discussion on is who initiate the data production. If it's CSO themselves or communities, or it is an official or state organization, national statistical offices, or another line ministries, and then what are the roles of the citizens in producing data. Next slide, please. So this is how we described the level of citizen participation. There are, we put down 5 levels of steps of citizen participation from insufficient to sufficient. We have a little bit of description on what each means, but then we are still working on really bringing more details on what exactly does it mean in the field. For example, what is partnership? The level of partnership that's sufficient, that really entails sufficient citizen participation. Next slide, please. So this is the set of 10 principles of citizen data. And you will see a lot of familiar terms. If you work in official statistics or other kind of data, we talk about independence, relevance, and then of course, professional standard that's linked to data quality. Very important, of course, number 6, excuse me, definition and self-identification. And the last one's openness and accessibility. Next slide, please. Excuse me. We have a set of enabling environments, 8 of them. We talk about trust, building trust, and we talk about importance of human capital. And what about laws and regulations? The statistical laws, are they enabling to support the citizen data? What about governance structure? Discussion has been ongoing right now. Data quality, extremely important, but in the context of citizen data, what does it mean as fit for purpose? And lastly, funding. We need the the citizen data production and use need funding to support. Next slide, please. And this is a roadmap that we have included in the framework. It includes three aspects. One is the mobilization of partners. As I mentioned, the framework is really a tool to bring all of us together. All partners, and today we have our colleagues from UN and also UN country team, and we have our CSOs in the panel. And this year we are working to finalize and test and finalize the framework to really make sure that it works on the ground. And lastly, not least, but implement the framework moving forward. How do we really support citizen data protection and bringing all the stakeholders together? Next slide, please. This is just a timeline that we have. Starting from now, we are in April 2024. So we submit this draft Copenhagen Framework to the Statistical Commission this year, which happened February, March 2024, and received support from national statistical offices. And then in July, we will have our third expert group meeting on citizen data. That will be focusing on the case studies, piloting, and also data quality. And this year, as I mentioned, we'll do the piloting and finalization of the framework and submit finalized or a revised Copenhagen Framework to the Statistical Commission for next year, the March 2025. Next slide, please. Really, a few words, but this means a lot to us as a collaborative on citizen data. That really brings a lot of partners together for us to work together. That we have been working separate in different spaces to further develop, refine, finalize the Copenhagen Framework, provide a space for us to share. This is something that's very different that they will come out from our panelists for sure. We are from NSOs, from UNSD. We're so used to work with national statistical offices. But how do we really work with communities and very small communities and civil society organizations? We do not have the channel to reach out to them. We're there to foster collaborations and a platform for advocacy and mobilize of relevant stakeholders, and then develop norms and methodologies. Next slide, my last slide. So the framework is still under consultation, and there's a link if there's a form that for you to submit your input. And this year, as mentioned, we will be test and pilot the framework. If you have a good case study or if you're working on citizen data, please reach out to us if you'd like to test, help, and pilot the framework. And we have our newsletters. Please email us if you would like to work with us at citizen.data@un.org. Sorry, I think I took a longer time. I was too ambitious. I'll stop there. If you have questions, please put in the Q&A session. And also introduce yourself and have a peer exchange in the chat. Without further ado, let me move to our great panelist to start our panel discussion. I have one question for each one of you. The first round, could you please introduce yourself and describe how your work has involved citizen data? Now, I will start with Jessa from UN Women and Jose, and then Halima and Francesca in this order, if it's okay with you. Jessa, your turn.
Yeah, thank you, Howie, and good day or evening to everyone. So I'm Jessa Encarnacion, serving as Interregional Advisor on Gender Statistics of UN Women's Gender Data Program, Women Count. So together with UNSD, UN Women serves as co-chair of the Collaborative on Citizen Data. Now, to answer the main question of Howie, our work has involved citizen data in two ways. Our work at UN Women more broadly, and the Women Count program, our gender data program specifically. So starting with the broader umbrella, UN Women is rooted in a history of advocacy and grassroots engagement. We were in fact created as a result of intense advocacy by women's groups. This is just one reason why citizen data have always been important as a tool for the advancement of our work to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment. Now, with our implementation of the Women Count program since 2018, UN Women has been providing substantive support to the statistical, legal, and policy framework, particularly on the production, analysis, dissemination, and use of gender statistics. Particularly on the use part, this has taught us not to entrust the promotion of data use to national statistical offices alone. They're often not policy analysts and are certainly not policy advocates. And this is where our work on citizen data with our national partners come in. So for example, through our Women Count project in Uganda, 36 civil society organization implementing partners, or what we call CSOIPs, have successfully completed trainings in 2023. As a result, mapping of CSO data vis-a-vis the SDG indicators, their metadata, and more importantly, a capacity improvement plan have been developed by our partner CSOs. There has also been increased synergy between the CSO IPs or implementing partners, as well as the thematic focal points of UN Women in Uganda, supporting further development, integration, and use of citizen data in our respective thematic programs in our Uganda office. So in line with the UN 2.0 week, as the UN 2.0 promote forward-thinking culture and cutting-edge skills for a better UN system impact, we at UN Women has been integrating and using citizen data in our own thematic policies and programs. It should start at home. So we have been doing so in the past, and in this UN 2.0 environment, we are continuously and progressively doing so.
Thank you so much, Jessa. Thank you so much, Jessa. Now I'd like to give the floor to Jose.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I really want to extend our gratitude to the organizers of this event. First, for convening this very important meeting, and secondly, for giving the disability sector through the International Disability Alliance the possibility of sharing with us, with you, our work and what we are focusing on our views on this important matter. My name is Jose Viera. I'm the current interim executive director for the International Disability Alliance, a network of 14 global and regional networks of persons with disabilities. We represent the 1.3 billion people with disabilities through approximately 1,100 organizations of persons with disabilities working in more than 180 countries. And very briefly, IDA, along with different key partners such as CBM Global Disability Inclusion and many other NGOs working in the disability sector, have been working for more than 10 years around data and how to include persons with disabilities in this agenda. Some of our most recent advancements on this agenda are focused basically on 3 pillars. And the first one is how to develop the skills of our organization of persons with disabilities around the world to advocate for more data and to collaborate with other civil society organizations around the collection, the analysis of data for persons with disabilities. Pillar number 2, which is basically to advocate at the global and national level for the segregation of data for persons with disabilities, and basically the intersection between the data agenda and the disability rights agenda. And the third pillar is actually to collect information, evidence, and actually data on the importance for persons with disabilities, especially in the policy discussion level, around the need of having reliable, comparable data around persons with disabilities. As you can imagine, this journey is not easy. It requires a lot of investment regarding developing partnerships, working with UN agencies, civil society, and academia. But I have to say that overall, and in particularly this new initiative of citizen collaboration and citizen generated data, it's indeed another great opportunity for organizations of persons with disabilities to be engaged in this agenda. We very much looking forward to the discussion today, but also we want to acknowledge what we have achieved so far, and always reminding ourselves of what needs to happen in the future to make sure that persons with disabilities, we are fully included in all agendas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. Now I'd like to move to Halima.
Thank you, Hanoi. I hope you can hear me. I want to start by thanking for organizing this event, such an important topic, and inviting me to join as a panelist. I'm Halima Niamat, serving as a Development Coordination Officer at the UN Resident Coordinator's Office in Bangladesh. In my role, I focus primarily on data coordination, management, and result reporting for the UN country team. In my capacity, I have been involved from RCO supporting the UN country team in cultivating connections between the national key actors, mainly the National Statistical Organization, other institutions in the statistical system, as well as the civil society partners. The partnership here is very key, and specifically in harnessing the potential of citizen-generated data to drive impactful change, as well as recognize the invaluable contribution of every segment of the society, basically the whole society approach towards achieving the SDG. I have been supporting UN Statistics Division initiative on citizen-generated data, collaboration with CSO platform and the National Statistical Organization in Bangladesh, which was missing in our country, but I think now we are towards that. I'm truly passionate about the transformative power of data, and I'm going to share my experience with you today, with all of you, as we navigate to this vital discussion.
Thank you so much, Halima, for your help in Bangladesh. Now, Francesca.
Yes, hi everybody, and thank you, Aoi. It's great to be here and to be part of this conversation today. My name is Francesca Perucci. I'm Director of Policy and Partnerships at Open Data Watch. So what is our role, and why did we join the collaborative and became members of the steering committee of the collaborative? ODW is a non-profit organization that focuses on making development data more accessible, open, and overall more impactful. We focus on monitoring, as you probably know, our flagship publications, Odin on open data, but we do research, we have capacity development activities and advocacy to support the efforts of national statistical systems to improve their data, increase the use of data, the impact overall, the value of data. So why the focus on citizen data? What we do, central to what we do, is really promoting and supporting more inclusive data systems and identifying solutions to make those, to close those data gaps and make those data systems more inclusive. We support the development of the Copenhagen Framework, and in particular, we work with the UN Statistics Division, also thanks to a project generously funded by the Hewlett Foundation that allow us to conduct case studies. We haven't really started the implementation yet of, as Aoi was explaining, of the Copenhagen Framework. We're still in the phase of collecting inputs from all different partners and conducting case studies to understand whether the framework reflects what's needed in countries in the field. We also need to further develop the technical guidance that is needed so that citizen data that are currently produced can be effectively used, utilized to their maximum extent. So this is where the work has been focusing until now. We also have a role in enhancing the communication of the collaborative and enhancing the visibility, the branding of the collaborative. So we really try to support the work of the collaborative to make it really very widely known and attract new members, attract new partners, and more funding. Another aspect I want to mention is that at ODW, we also work on intersectionality, and we see the very important links between intersectionality and the need for intersectionality data and the support to the development of citizen data, which is a key source of data for intersectionality. So overall, we're very happy to be part of this, very happy to be part of the collaborative, and I look forward to the discussion today. Back to you, Aoi.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Now let's move on. Let's move on to round two questions. And Jess, I'll start with you again. You've touched upon a little bit on how young women works on the ground and how young women started with the movement of civil society organizations. So in what way do you foresee this Copenhagen framework that we work together contribute to further strengthening and transforming of gender data system?
Yeah, thank you, Howie. Well, first, as we observe, I always keep coming back to the UN 2.0, as we observe UN 2.0 week. And as I understand, this side event is under the umbrella of UN 2.0's focus on innovation, that is, the approach to upgrading skills and innovation capacity to enhance our work within the UN system in support of member states. Thus, I will adapt my intervention in terms of innovation in the context of our citizen data initiative and focus on 3 points. So first, innovation in gender data ecosystems is sometimes erroneously seen as primarily NSO, or in some cases, Ministry of Women, or in some cases, the entire national statistical system led. So with the role of citizens and communities sometimes understated. So I think we should adopt a profound understanding that women's groups, grassroots-led innovation on citizen data production and use is integral in driving gender equality and women's empowerment, in particular for the most left behind subgroups of women and girls. Second, we need to embed innovation in our DNA. In this case, we need to innovate the way we work, the way we do work, and the way we work with partners on gender data. There should be a paradigm shift to ensure that those who are historically overlooked and underserved by traditional approaches in national statistical systems will be more deliberately counted, visible, and heard. That is, it is done with intentionality and not just an afterthought. And then third, we should identify promising solutions on the ground towards producing and using citizen data and help scale up or adapt them to underserved women and girls. This is also in line with what Francesca is also saying, that we need to showcase more case studies, more success stories, and use cases where citizen data is moving the needle and creating changes in women's and girls' lives. So I think if we systematically do this, as you asked whether how the Copenhagen Framework can strengthen and transform gender data systems, I foresee the Copenhagen Framework being beyond the framework it offers, but equally important, it will contribute to innovating, strengthening, and transforming the gender data ecosystem. It could and should change the game for the usual actors in the gender data ecosystem, in particular the NSOs. Over.
Thank you so much, Jessa, for bringing us back to UN 2.0 on innovation and changing our work culture. Now move on to Jose. So similar question, how do you see in what ways the framework and beyond would contribute to and the strengthening and transformation of data on person with disabilities? How can we better support you?
Thank you very much for your question. Clearly, what we see is that, and I kind of referred in my first intervention, that while we acknowledge some of the progress made so far when it comes to collection of data around persons with disabilities, there are significant gaps that needs to be addressed, and some of them are, I would say, separately in like two different areas. One is who can collect data, how can we collect data, and what is the role of organization of persons with disabilities in this component of generating data. And at the same time, how can we use the data collected for policy discussion? And clearly, what we see in this framework and all the work that is happening around the great initiative that we started in Copenhagen and we continue doing, is that there is a clear recognition for allowing different actors, different stakeholders, to actively contribute in the generation of data. And clearly, organizations of persons with disabilities are in general not only what we can call like a resource hub for persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities, we usually go to our organizations to get services that usually we don't get from states. But at the same time, or in connection to those organizations of persons with disabilities acting as resources or as resource hubs, organizations of persons with disabilities, we generate a lot of data about education, about employment, about humanitarian action, about reconstructive, inclusive reconstruction of cities after crisis, about access to health. So clearly, what we see or what we understand the advantages of these initiatives is that we are bringing to the table different stakeholders that by default and on a daily basis, we are collecting data and we are trying to make a significant contribution to the broader disability agenda. Then the other thing that I was going to say is that we understand this gap that is for what and who collects data. At the same time, frameworks like this one are also investing significant resources in how to use the data for policy discussion. And that's clearly another other value that we see in this framework. And again, organization of persons with disabilities, we are doing on a daily basis and we expect to do even more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. I see really a lot of value because of your outreach to the communities and civil society organizations and your experience that we can bring to others. Now, let me move on to Halima. Halima, reflecting on your collaboration and your efforts in Bangladesh that foster the collaboration within the country. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how the critical role of UN country teams in championing citizen data initiatives, especially in the context of amplifying the voice of marginalized communities?
Okay, thank you, Hanoi. Let me start by saying that we are in the digital age and where the citizen data emerge as a critical tool in efforts to close the data disparities as well as the fostering inclusivity. The data that generated collaboratively with citizens or initiated by the citizens themselves provides an invaluable perspectives for tackling the more urgent challenge that confronting in our communities we are confronting. The collaboration between the National Statistical Office and civil society organization in Bangladesh is instrumental, specifically in fostering a culture of data-driven decision-making, as well as amplifying the voice of the marginalized community. We cannot overstate the critical role that our UN country teams are playing in supporting the citizen-generated data initiative within this context. UN country teams are better positioned to play the crucial role, not only as the facilitator, but also advocates for the citizen data initiative at the country level. How they can do? By leveraging their influence, networks, and they can mobilize political will, which is very important for the citizen-generated data recognition, as well as support with their resources, expertise, to ensure the success and sustainability of such initiative. As they have been understanding on, as the UN country team has more understanding on the local context and dynamics, this enables them to tailor this intervention more, I would say, they prioritize for the communities and specifically for the marginalized communities. In Bangladesh, we have served a crucial role, I would say, in promoting the whole society approach by having those collaboration and definitely the collaboration initiated from your end, and instrumental in advocating the consideration of citizen-generated data, onboarding to the political commitment for considering for SDG reporting and monitoring. Eventually, the collaboration between the NSO and CSOs would take into next level when the government will reflect the data, citizen-generated data, into the national SDG tracker. This national SDG tracker, as you know, for you, this information, it's a monitoring tool, SDG progress monitoring tool that we have in the country level. Furthermore, UN country team advocates for adoption of innovation technologies and methodologies such as initiative like mobile survey, community mapping, and participatory budgeting empower the marginalized communities to anticipate their needs and conserve. So those also contribute as key for the citizen generated. So empowering the marginalized voice through citizen-generated data initiatives lies at the core work of, I would say, of UN country team. And we are deeply committed to promoting the inclusivity and ensuring that all perspectives are not only heard, but also actively integrated into the development here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Halima. So grateful for your support in Bangladesh. It would not have happened. I think we're almost there signing an MOU. You on behalf of UN system, without you, it would not have happened. Now let me move on to Francesca. You have touched upon a little bit earlier on the data ecosystem. So do you see the citizen data movement that we're working on will transform, strengthen the national data ecosystem that we've been talking about?
Yes, certainly. If you look at what has happened over the last 7-8 years following the adoption of the SDGs, there's been this increased attention to giving all groups in the population the adequate data representation, what we used to say, for data disaggregation, which really means building inclusive data systems that reflect the experiences and realities and the needs of all parts of the population. So certainly we've seen some progress, small area estimates, innovative approaches in household surveys, increased the integration of data sources, promote interoperability, all great developments in terms of sort of augmenting and increasing the granularity of data. But we really haven't been successful in meeting the data demands that was given by the SDGs in terms of the principle of leaving no one behind. So I really see citizen data as the opportunity to really drastically change that. And I see that in 3 ways. First, data systems in countries really rely mostly on foundational data programs. But those programs, the classical population censuses, surveys, etc., administrative data sources, but those alone cannot really respond to those data demands. And I see citizen data offering really the tool that we need to help bridge those gaps. And as Jessa was giving very good examples of how you empower marginalized communities, how you really ensure that data truly represent and serve everyone. So that's the first aspect. And it doesn't matter really whether this data integrated into the official statistical systems, which would of course increase the representation, in official of all these groups in official statistics. Even if when they are not, they still raise awareness on important issues. They still shed light on aspects that would be otherwise invisible and can really effectively inform action. And as I mentioned earlier, citizen data are also a very powerful data source for intersectionality, which is central to development, to SDG implementation. It's a core dimension when considering addressing inequality. Second, citizens and community initiatives, these being run entirely by civil society organizations or co-created with other state entities, with national statistical offices, they offer citizens and communities an opportunity to gain ownership of the data process. So in a sense, they influence the overall data governance system. So they really give a bigger role to citizens, which leads to better and higher data impact. So you have data systems where citizens have agency and they have somehow ownership of what's been done, how, to even decide what issues to be covered. And third, I would say that we've seen also, as we see progress, we also, in data and in development data in particular, we also witness an erosion of trust in data. In addition, the rise of artificial intelligence adds new challenges, especially as concerns privacy issues, discrimination, inadequate representation of all groups, and equity. So again, here, citizens, I think, play a very important role. They're more than just data users, and they have agency, and they can participate in the production of data, ensuring that they become more inclusive. So I would say almost like citizen data and the AI, the two major trends that should go together. And on the one hand, you have the advance of AI and the opportunities that offers in terms of producing data more, faster, or adding tools that enhance the capacity of countries in many different areas. But at the same time, citizen data and increasing the role of citizen can also ensure that the data they feed into the algorithms and the machine learning models become more equitable. Back to you, Aoi.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. Now, I've heard quite a bit on how citizen data can help with the data ecosystem, intersectionality, fulfill our pledge or commitment on leaving no one behind, empowering citizens and building trust, and importance of partnership with our CSOs and our partners here, how we reach out to 1,100 CSOs, person with disabilities, through our partners, working with our country team on the ground. This also links so closely to UN 2.0 that I would like to move us forward to the third question, regarding to how we, if you can offer a specific advice or recommendation for the UN system that to really effectively support the work on the implementation of the framework. Do you see any changes that we should make? We should change our way of thinking. How do we really fully embrace our UN 2.0 vision? How we change the way of how we work? Now, Jessa, you're first to go. Be self-critical.
Yes, thank you. How you be self-critical. Okay, first, full disclosure. You asked for one piece of advice, but I will cheat here. I will give one piece of advice, but it will have like 3 sub-items. So my one piece of advice, we should shift foundations, cultures, and mindsets. So first on foundation, we should create an enabling environment to empower citizens and communities in the data space. So for example, with the establishment of the Collaborative on Citizen Data, the UN Statistical Commission promoted a space to share knowledge and experiences and foster collaboration across different communities. So a good signal and must be sustained and promoted. In the last session of the UN Statistical Commission, we have seen some participation through some members of the collaborative. If we are going to be self-critical about it, I think the UN system or the UN Statistical Commission can do better because the participation is still limited. We can do more, we can do better with regards to this. And it's not just presence, but rather active participation or active engagement throughout the process. Second, culture. We should foster open cultures that encourage experiments and learning opportunities across all actors in the data ecosystem. So a case in point, our country office in Morocco through the Women Count program has supported the country in their conduct of their violence against women survey. I think traditional methods will show that when you conduct violence against women survey, it's the NSO leading the process, it's the NSO conducting the survey on the ground with their own survey enumerators. So with this support, there's an innovation or a collaboration or engagement that happened on the ground, with civil society teaming up with the NSO survey enumerators to track violence against women in Morocco while the survey is being done on the ground. So it's both the quantitative process happening on the ground through the NSO, and likewise our partners from civil society supporting the NSO, and likewise leading the process in terms of the qualitative information, in terms of support given, and in terms of handling the entire process, considering the sensitivity of the process. So this engagement cultivated relationships and allowed CSOs to have their voices heard on the challenges that they face, and which built momentum that involved them in the whole process of data production, design and production. So as a result, CSOs involved in designing and implementing the survey have also served as our agents of change. They have become our voice in using the data for awareness raising and for guiding local service delivery for survivors. So I think changing this culture, these traditional approaches to data, is basically a win-win situation for all of us. And lastly, changing mindsets. This requires open minds, supportive and inclusive environments. So increased recognition and use of citizen data is an innovation in and of itself. It embraces opportunities to tap all available resources, whether it's active partners that we have, and as well as sustainable solutions that they also offer for addressing gaps both in data production as well as in use. I recognize that this will not happen overnight, but we must collectively act now to make this a reality sooner rather than later.
Thank you so much, Jessa. Since I'm also wearing the head of household surveys, I'm just thinking on one hand, nobody wants to respond to our surveys. On the other hand, we have a lot of voice to bringing the civil citizens' voice and their data in. So how do we really bridge the two? And it really requires a lot of thinking behind connecting the two pieces of puzzle. Now moving on to Jose. So you've been working with us and you've been so active within the UN system as well. So be critical on what are things that we should change.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to, as you say, be critical, constructively always. So couple of keywords that we would really appreciate everyone take notes and go away with from this event. Inclusion. Like if we don't develop a framework that is inclusive of person with disabilities, and even one step further, the intersectionality component between person with disabilities and other social movements, for sure we are going to be losing a lot of relevant information and data. Inclusion again. Accessibility. If we do not develop systems, and when I say systems, I mean technical, technological, cultural, collaboration, partnership, systems that are accessible. Accessibility and inclusions are preconditions for persons with disabilities to be at the table and bring our experience and knowledge. Next, further change at the national level. We clearly see that most of the progress so far has been made at the global level, although still a lot to be done. But when we unpack and we look into the national level progress, clearly the result is way less positive. And the last thing that I would say is organization of persons with disabilities to be considered as equal partner for implementation of initiatives. In general, and it's our mandate and it's somehow our DNA, is to do advocacy, to advocate for more inclusion of persons with disabilities in any agenda. But it's also true that we have collectively developed skills and experience to also be able to contribute, to produce, to generate, to partner, to co-create initiatives. And this framework is a good example of what I'm saying. So again, OPDs equal partners for implementation as part of the civil society networks and the bigger picture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. Very important points, Fakima. I'm not going to repeat given that we have 9 minutes. Now move on to Halima.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Hanoi. On this one, I just want to mention, like, collaboration and data transparency are paramount for the effective implementation of the framework. To enhance our work at the country level, UN system need to continue. They need to continue with the effective and proactive role for fostering the cross-sectoral partnership and promoting the data sharing mechanism with various actors. As the UN system already playing an important role by establishing, advocating for the standardized protocols for data collection, sharing, analysis, they also need to facilitate the capacity building initiatives to empower the local communities in utilizing data for decision making and policy formulation. By prioritizing the collaboration and transparency, the UN can play a significant role, contribute to realizing the objective of the framework and advancing the global effort towards data-driven governance. That's only my piece. Oh.
Thank you so much, Halima. Really look forward to continue our collaboration. I'm so excited about the upcoming work in Bangladesh. Now, moving on to Francesca. I don't know, be self-critical and be critical since you were with us at the UN system and now you're outside. So you have a better view of how we function and maybe reflection on how we should function moving forward. Word advice from you.
Are you telling me now I can speak out my mind?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, what is my recommendation? I think the critical aspect of citizen-generated data is the fact that it's not just one part of the system, right, that works on the data generation. It's all different parts, from civil society organization to international agencies that support UN country teams. All have to play a part. That's what really makes citizen data powerful, but it's also what makes implementation very difficult. It's the main challenge, for instance, when you define approaches to capacity development, as we discussed in other fora on sustainability, financing, etc. So my recommendation really is about making sure that we create the enabling environment and the mechanism to bring all these different parts of the system together in a sort of efficient way. So it's important to establish the networks and offer the spaces for all these actors to come together. How can the UN help with that? Well, one step that was very important was bringing this to the UN Statistical Commission, so that one part of the puzzle, which is the NSO and the national statistical systems, they are on board with it, they understand, they embrace the framework, they contribute to it, etc. But I think that's not enough. You really need to bring in also the other functional commissions, so that there are mechanisms established, especially when it comes to defining different approaches depending on the groups that you consider, right? The migrants, refugees, indigenous people, there are mechanisms and there are very important networks for all of them. So it's important to also engage and give the responsibility to some extent also to the other functional commissions. And when it comes to the statistical commission, I think that also has to change to some extent to bring in and give space to civil society organizations and other stakeholders, so that you build the right environment from the top and where the normative work is discussed, reflecting what is already happening in countries at the national level, right? So you also have to work through that and make sure that the right conversation happens also. This is a little bit what we struggled with when we presented the framework, to the Commission, because there was not really an official endorsement, given that only one part of the system was represented at the Statistical Commission. We didn't have the voices of everybody else. So I think that would be one important change that would facilitate this type of work and the approach, and which is really central to making inclusive data systems happen in countries. And this is also spelled out to some extent in the roadmap to implement the Copenhagen Framework. So it would be great to also receive inputs on those aspects, right? Is the roadmap, does the roadmap contain all the elements that we need for the implementation? Leveraging citizen data and really use them to the full potential cannot just be done by one part of the system. That's very clear. So the UN has to sort of create that space. Back to you, Awi.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Thank you, everybody, all my panelists, for your great input and the way forward, the suggestions and advice from you. We have a few minutes. If anyone has a burning question, you like to speak or raise your hand, or you like, do we see any questions in the chat? Based, engaged.
Yes, we do, and we're trying to respond to them one by one.
Yes. So there's a hand by Suzanne Hardy. We need to enable yours. Suzanne.
There we
sorry,
go.
I'm looking. Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very encouraging. I work for Eviance, and we've been engaged at the UN for the last 10 years and had real difficult time finding others dedicated to community-based data collection. So this is really exciting. I'm just curious if our community, so I work in the disability sector, we're grappling with how we might intervene with some community-based data, some citizen data, with the recent UN report on the SDG implementation. And specifically point 26, because it actually indicates that persons with disability, i.e. People with behavioral, intellectual or neurological issues are actually barriers to social development. So it's kind of contrary to the human rights work that we're involved with on the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. So I'm just curious if there might be a way to use the data that's being collected from a citizen perspective to really inform an intervention in some, or at least reviewing some of the ongoing reportings of the SDG. I guess we really need to have data that's grounded in human rights as well, and not just data.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm looking at my panelists. Anyone would like to respond? I see Jessa.
Yeah, I think from our end, it's also related to the point what was also raised by Dilek with or somebody on the chat with regards to what extent citizen data so far has been used, or at least gender-specific SDG indicators has been used for reporting to the SDGs. And off the top of my mind, I cannot pick a specific country that we support under the Women Count program, but more generally, it's something that we support in terms of filling data gaps, particularly the SDG, localized SDG indicator framework, as well as other national indicator frameworks. But that being said, I think also relating to the point being raised by Claudia here on the chat with, was it Claudia, the quality of data, I think the citizen data in itself, the quality is fit for purpose. And then for SDG reporting, it's for national level reporting. But as Francesca has been saying, citizen data, the great strength of citizen data is that its most valued characteristic, at least from the gender data perspective, is it aims to bring out people's voices, and most often the voices of those left furthest behind, and gives picture that is not often in official statistics. So it's not aspiring to, at least in our case, working on citizen data in the gender data ecosystem, to have national representative for reporting purposes, but rather for those specific subgroups of population of women not often captured in official statistics, and therefore benefiting from the real outcomes of the SDGs towards gender equality and women's empowerment. So I think, yeah, at least from our end, in terms of support to national reporting, there is that goal, but also parallel to that, it's also aiming to advance SDG in its outcome beyond reporting. Over.
Thank you, Jessa. Any other questions? Anyone would like? I enabled. I know we have 2 minutes. Let's give 3 minutes. So if we are you okay if we wrap up at 9:05? Just to stick to our time. That's fine with our panelists. Any other questions? I've just enabled your mics, and so you can actually. There's a hand, please, Daniel.
Yes, hi, Howie. Just a question to put it to the floor. There is a question on the chat on the framework timeline. Maybe you'd like to say when the deadline is for collecting comments.
Oh, sorry. I haven't been to the Q&A session. What's the deadline for providing comments on the Copenhagen Framework? I think we have up to until towards the end of this year for input. But there will be versions starting, I think, second half of the year when the case studies come in. Did I respond to your question?
Yes, thank you. It was responded also in the chat. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you, sorry. I don't see a notification. With that, if you're okay, just a couple of words. I think it's really great to hear from all of you. And first of all, thank you, all my panelists and the participants who joined the session. It really is a great pleasure, and we have learned a lot of great ideas for how we work together, how we reach out to our communities from New York, through our brother and sister in countries, and through our partners that have been working for a much longer history with civil society organizations, how we could possibly transform ourselves in many ways. So it's really great to hear your advice. If you are, as Francesca mentioned, if you are interested in being part of the collaborative, in learning more about the framework, in joining, in having questions, in providing input, and citizen.data@un.org is the email to reach out to us. It's our dedicated email address for any queries and questions on citizen data. With that, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Howie, and thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day. Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Bye.